Welcome back to the Stitch Time podcast. I'm your host, Keith Stitch. Today, I'm going to be telling a story about my second spinal fusion. This was probably the biggest surgery I've ever had. It was, I think, combined over 40 hours of surgery. So my spine was fused when I was 12 years old. I have scoliosis. At the age of 12, the curvature had reached over 60 degrees. And what happens after that, that's when basically they determine we need to fuse your spine. So I had it fused. It was a big surgery when I was 12. To give an idea of how bad my back was, my ribs overlapped. My right ribs would literally overlap. That's how bad the curve was. So they did the fusion when I was 12. Growing up, I was known for, you know, I used to wear leg braces, and these braces I'd break them every couple months. I started out with stainless steel bars. When I say bars, that's what supported me on both sides of my body, and they had joints. Basically, you would unlock it, and that's how you would sit down. They were at the knee and at your hip. And I would break these stainless steel bars every couple months. So it got to the point where they moved me up to a titanium bar. Titanium was the strongest metal that they had, and I would still break them about every 3 months. And it got to a point where my dad would fix them himself, and then he taught me how to fix them. And that's actually what got me into the field of orthotics. I was an orthotic technician for over 6 years. I went to school for it, and that's what got me into that field. But anyways, I would break these braces every 2 to 3 months, and I was very known for breaking them. It got to the point where they would send us parts, and we would do it ourselves. After talking with the owner of Union Orthotics, my dad personally spoke to him, and he was able to hook us up with parts. So it was, it was known that I would break them. And whenever I was talking to the doctor about getting the spine fused, the big topic was, is this going to be strong enough for me? And basically, the doctor, he reassured us. He said, "Oh no, those will be strong enough. Don't worry, you're not going to break those rods." And I had them broke by the time I was the age of 15. I'll make sure I include a picture. I will actually make sure that the picture is the background. It'll be the picture for this episode to kind of give an idea of what I'm talking about. But basically, they broke right in the middle, just probably, let's say 4 or 5 inches below my chest line. And it was shocking. It was very shocking. It was very frustrating because, when I was 12, it was big. It was big surgery. And so they were broke. And we kind of figured, just from being a kid and walking with crutches and braces, we figure basically whenever I would walk, that was like the point that I would pivot in my body. And eventually it just gave out. What's weird is I never noticed it. I never noticed, I didn't feel any pops or hear anything. So it was a shock whenever they did x-rays and they found that they were both broke. It was very shocking. And over the years it got worse, and I understood that, I'm going to live life. I think I wasn't going to let it stop me, because, I think a lot of people let things just kind of stop them, and they don't, they just stop. And, being a kid, I was not going to let that happen. I was going to continue to live on. And so I still did all the normal activities that I was doing. I was sled riding, on the skateboarding. When I say sled riding, I'm talking like being pulled behind a vehicle, and I actually got a concussion at one point from it. And so I never let anything stop me. That's something that if you know me on a personal level, I have the mindset that nothing will stop me. Nothing. If I put my mind to it, I'm going to achieve it. Now, obviously, I understand that I have limitations. There's boundaries that, sometimes you just can't, and you have to accept that. You have to be honest with yourself. But also, there's a lot in life where no, I just have to work hard at this. I will be able to do this. I need to put my mind to it, and I need to take action. And that's the biggest thing in life is you have to take action. If you don't take action, you'll never find out if you're able to do that or not. But they broke when I was like 14, and basically they said what we're going to do is we're going to monitor them. We're not going to do anything about it, but if it gets too bad, we might have to fix it. Or it was they kind of left it up to me, and obviously it terrified me, absolutely terrified, because they're just rods. They're steel rods in my back. And, part of me was worried. I'm like, what if it punctures a lung or another organ? Like, what if it, moves and it just causes that? So I never tried to think about it, but I knew that it could potentially turn into a very serious surgery. And, I just kind of put it off. I wanted to go through high school because I understood that when you have a surgery like that, it puts you out excuse me, months upon months. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to miss out on, high school. I enjoyed school. I went to a vo-tech school, 10th grade. And to be honest, I loved it. I had so much fun in school. I wasn't the best student. I wasn't the best, academically, but, I really enjoyed school. I had a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I had enough mischief. If you ask some of the teachers from that school, they'll tell you. But it was all good fun. I never was, like a little asshole, that kind of thing. Or at least I didn't think I was. I'm sure there's somebody out there to tell you otherwise. But I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So I didn't want to miss out on my high school career. And, you know, it I graduated, and I was too focused on school. I was an Eagle Scout. Like, I had to do my Eagle Scout project. So I did that. And then, of course, like planning of going to school, which I knew I was going to go to school in Minnesota for orthotic technology in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. It was actually at a community college where I went, but there was two schools at the time that were doing that program. And basically the other school was in Florida and this one was in Minnesota. And honestly, looking back, I should have chose the one in Florida, but I did not. So, but either way, we were planning that and like getting that figured out. We made a trip out and to just kind of check out the area and look at apartments. And I definitely, we made sure that I got an apartment lined up. And I started school that August. I moved up there, and so I was too worried about that. Well, it wasn't until when I had my pressure ulcer. I talked about it on one of the earlier episodes. When I had the pressure ulcer, basically that put me down for 9 months, and I knew I was already out for school. I knew I wasn't going to be able to go back until at the earliest the fall semester. So I was out for 9 months. So basically I missed let me think about this for a second. The spring, the fall, I can't remember, to be honest. It put me behind a whole year. And so what I decided was, after the pressure ulcer, I said, you know what? Because originally when I came home that year, I was going to get the surgery done over the summer. That was the whole idea. And I was actually there for the pre-op, and that's when they discovered a pressure ulcer, and it obviously halted the refusion of my spine. So we put that off, and after my skin flap done on my pressure ulcer, I decided that I wanted to have the back done. Like, I just want to knock it all out all at one time. Just want to get it done. I was tired of hospitals. I was tired of being in bed and laid up, and it was time to get back to my life. So it was, I believe, in May of that year. It might have been a little later. But anyways, so I decided I wanted to have it done, and we planned it out. And basically he said, so what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to do 2 surgeries. And which scared the hell out of me, because what they told me they were gonna have to do was, so I have a scar that wraps up around the side of me. And it's a big scar. It goes up around the side. And that scar is from, basically, they deflated my lung. They took part of my rib out, and they put it in my back. First surgery. That's why they deflated the lung, and which is crazy. And I actually had to reinflate that lung myself. It took about 3 to 4 days. Basically, they said we're gonna deflate the lung, but it will be up to you to reinflate that lung. And it hurt like hell. It hurt so bad to breathe. I remember for 3 or 4 days of it was struggle to breathe. I didn't want to laugh. Sorry, I'm in a park. I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do a podcast at the park. This is a great day. It's a little chilly, a little windy. I got the bike out. I'm like, let's do an episode at the park. So that's why there's noise around here. But so the first surgery was they deflate the lung, they put the rib in, and then they wait 5 days because I mean this is there's a lot of trauma on the body to do one surgery, a lot of trauma, and they knew that, so they said we're going to give you 5 days to recover. So basically, I was in the hospital for 5 days, hurt like hell, it was bad. And then they went in the back, and when they went in the back, basically what they did was you have the broken rods, and then you have the pieces. They added two pieces on the left and right side, and there's like connectors that they added in there. And I mean, it is wild. It's crazy, to be honest. Looking at it, it blows me away every time I see it, especially considering I'm not going to share quite yet the second part. It's crazy. There's a lot of metal inside of me, and they actually told me they could take out the other metal. I'm like, no, you're going to leave it the hell alone. And so they 5 days later, they add the pieces in. And mind you, I had a bump. I had a bump that ran across my forehead for probably a week. And I was like, what is this bump from? I didn't think about it. That bump was from me laying on my forehead for so long during that surgery. It was a combined between the two surgeries, it was close to 40 hours of surgery. It was a lot. And it was an intense recovery. Um, I remember. So they did this surgery at Children's Hospital, which I was 20 at the time. So with my situation, I was able to go there until the age of 20. I really liked my doctor. I liked Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. I thought they did a phenomenal job. And, they took care of me for my pressure ulcer. So that's where I was at for that. I remember I was in intensive care, and I had a line that went into my neck. I had an IV in my neck, and the nurse turned, and it got caught. Her badge got caught on the line, and she yanked on my neck. I mother effed her so bad. I felt so bad for doing that, but I was in such pain, in intensive care. And I remember they took me down for an X-ray because whenever they do a surgery like that, they want to make sure everything's good, everything's not moving, so that they took me down for an X-ray. And I remember when they sat me up, they didn't think, they just sat me up, laying on the hospital bed, and it was so painful, so painful. I mean, it went from like 0 to 100 whenever they sat me up. I'm like, what the, and so it was crazy. And when they released me from the hospital, I wasn't allowed to push myself. I was terrified to even lay in bed, to be honest, because I was older. I had a better understanding. When I was 12, I really, I understood what they did, but I didn't really think about it. And by the age of 20, I had already been through the ringer. I understood the amount of surgery that went into this and what they had done to me. And I was terrified just to lay in bed that something was going to shift, something was going to move. And I mean, it was really, really hard. They actually, when I was still in the hospital, they casted me for a turtle shell brace. If anybody knows what a turtle shell brace is, if you don't know what it is, basically they cast your torso. It's basically like a jacket, and there is a front piece and a back piece, and it comes together, and you strap it on the sides. So they did that in the hospital, which tells you like this is very serious. They want to make sure this doesn't move. And I remember them doing it right there in the hospital. They made the turtle shell, and they fitted me right there in the hospital, which they usually don't do that kind of stuff. Usually you're discharged and you go to a facility and they fit you. No, they did it right there in the hospital. I was laying in a hospital bed, and they fitted me right then and there. So it just told me the level of severity of the situation of, they want to make sure that this shit doesn't move. And so I recovered. And well, actually, a part that I don't want to leave out, I had to say goodbye to my grandma while I was in the hospital. It was really sad. So my grandma had become, I to be honest, I don't even remember really what happened. I think it was one of those things where it came to the point of end of her life. I didn't really know. And so she's in another hospital. And I mean, this happened really quick. It was within days. And so she's in the hospital and she couldn't speak. And basically I had to say goodbye to her over the phone. I'm laying in my hospital bed. She's laying in her hospital bed. And I just remember saying, I love you, Grandma, and goodbye. And, I was rough because, I'm already going through my situation. And then on top of that, my grandmother's, she's dying. And she passed away. I think it was that evening. Of course, we had to plan a funeral. And I'm still in the hospital. I asked, I said, listen, my grandma's funeral is like now, like it's within days. Like I need to get out of here. Like I need to go to that funeral, so they actually got me out of the hospital to be able to go to. And I remember my parents picking me up. It was like a rush. Like we were like rushing our asses off. Like, I mean, I left straight from the fucking hospital. It got me dressed and we went straight to the funeral home, straight to the funeral home. And, I mean, I'm less than a week out, technically. It was less than a week out from, I was probably at the hospital 7 or 8 days. I don't know. It's probably under 10 days. And going to a funeral straight out of it. So, we had to do the funeral for my grandmother. And then life kind of continued. I actually met she's now my ex, but I met at the time, she ended up being my wife. I met her over that summer. I went back to school. And so this is where it really got shitty for me, though, with the whole fusion. Just within a year, basically one side of the connectors came out. And what that meant was all that work was for nothing. Nothing. It like if you ever look at me in person, like even right now I'm kind of leaning. That's because of my curvature. Um Basically one side came out, the other side came out. I think it was within a year. Within a year. And it's not like I wasn't doing anything like crazy or anything. Like I knew that year I had to be like, take it easy. I still lifted weights, but there was nothing crazy going on. I wasn't like pushing myself crazy. But yeah, the rods came out of the connectors, and I was so pissed off. I was so frustrated because I'm like, all that work, like all that trauma that my body went through, the trauma, and my grandmother's passing. I didn't get to say good, truly say goodbye to her. So it was really frustrating. And here I am now, I'm 34 years old, and it's still broke. To be honest, I don't want to know what it looks like. I've seen pictures. A couple years later, I've seen pictures of what it looks like. It's fucking bad. It's bad, and I will make sure I include a picture of what it looks like now, or at least then. And it was really bad. Actually, whenever they removed my kidney, they had to take their time on it because they said that with the way my spine was, I believe there were some arteries or veins nearby that they had to be careful because of the way my spine was curved. They didn't want to obviously hit anything while they were taking the kidney out. So the curvature of my spine affected that surgery. And I actually got to see a little bit. I saw an x-ray of that. I got to see part of what the spine looked like with the rods. And it's not good. It's not good. But basically, I'm like, I don't want any more surgery. I don't want to have another fusion. I don't want anybody else in there because, to be honest, I lost a little bit of sensation from that second surgery. And it pisses me off, man. I used to feel a sense. I can't even explain it because if you're able bodied, you're not going to understand. But basically, I could sense. I almost had like a sensation or like a pressure. I could feel certain things. And after that surgery, I lost that. And it pisses me off, man, because all that fucking work, all that trauma, and like it was a lot mentally too. It was a lot to recover from, and it was devastating, to be honest. But I mean, I'm doing okay now. But during that time, it was really hard. But I guess what I'm trying to say throughout this whole thing is like you got to learn to be patient. Patience is key. Like you have to be patient with yourself, and you have to be patient with those around you when you're going through something like this, because it's major. You know, go to the park. Huh? What a great idea. Okay, I can't even not laugh right now. It's too funny. It's too funny. Just speakerphone. Just walk through the park. Film. It's no big deal. But so yeah, um, for people listening, somebody walked behind me with a phone on speaker, and I just made me laugh because I could hear the conversation. So, anyways, um, patience. You know, be patient with yourself and understand that you got to be patient, but you also got to be strong, because getting through some shit like that, it's a lot. It is a lot. And I never really had any fear with the surgery. I trusted my doctor, I trusted the surgeons, but I didn't know how long the recovery process was going to be, and that's where the patience rolled in. I didn't know what was going to change after my life. Like the afterwards is what stressed me out. I didn't know. Not knowing is what bothered me. Wearing the brace. I didn't know how long I was going to have to wear the brace, because after crutches, after the age of 17, I wasn't wearing any braces at that point, so I didn't have to wear anything like that. And then whenever this happened, they put me in the turtle shell, and I had to wear it. So yeah, you gotta be strong, man. I hope people out there never have to deal with anything like that, because it's tough. And advocate for yourself. Definitely advocate for yourself. If you don't like something, fucking say something, dude. Like, it's your body, it's your life. Don't just let people do whatever they want to do just because oh, I'm a doctor, or I'm a nurse, or whatever. Like, it's your body at the end of the day. I've seen it on numerous times now, where I've had to advocate for myself. Even this is funny. So I used to go to a clinic, basically children's hospital. It was clinic is what they called it, and you would see basically your list of doctors. Mind you, my file was fucking big. If you saw my file, it was like, I mean, it wasn't like average. It was a file of X-rays and everything that's been done to me, and reports, and just everything that's been ever done on me. And like clinic was like the day where everybody would come in and they'd look at you. And these doctors, you wouldn't believe how many doctors would come in. They would look at your file before they walk through that door, and they would say, "Can you feel that, dude? You looked at my file. It says paralysis, paralyzed, mid chest down, level T5. What part of paralysis don't you understand? It's not just going to change. I'm not just going to, oh yeah, I can feel it now suddenly, doc. So, and I would have to tell them, like, no, I cannot feel that. I'd try to be nice about it, but at the same time, like, you would have to tell like 4 or 5 doctors that, like, are you kidding me right now? Like, no, I can't feel that. So you definitely have to advocate for yourself. You definitely have to raise awareness. If there's an issue, or they don't understand something, because a lot of times they wouldn't understand. They would come in, and you would have to like really explain things to them for them to understand what you were talking about. So definitely advocate for yourself, be patient, and you got to be strong. And obviously that's anything in life, but these kind of situations, there's so much of not knowing what the end result's going to be. But you just have to tell yourself, no matter what, I'm going to be okay. I'm strong. I can get through this no matter what. Nothing's going to stop me. The situation sucks, but I will be okay. I have to, if you have, if you are, religious, you have to trust in God. You have to trust in yourself, and you have to understand that it's going to be okay. It's going to take time, but you just have to remember that. So I'm going to end things there. We're going to end it there. All right. So with that, adapt, overcome, and conquer. Don't quit. Keep going. I, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow along on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Not only am I doing this podcast, but I also post workout videos. I started filming my workouts a while ago, just because if I can motivate somebody, why not? Why not motivate somebody? And I'm sure there's people out there that are tired of seeing it. I don't give a shit. It's my Facebook. If you don't like it, just fuck off. You know, unfriend me. I don't care. Unfollow me. Whatever you gotta do. But like, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy sharing it. I like being able to see my progress. So I'm gonna upload it. It takes me no effort whatsoever to put a camera on the ground and record myself doing some workouts. And I've had people, they tell me it's inspiring. Inspires them. So I'm like, cool. If I can make one difference, in one person's life, then so be it. Good. I'm going to keep doing it then. I enjoy it. I love working out. I enjoy that. I love seeing other people want to get involved. So I'm going to keep doing it. So till next time, guys, take it easy. I'm going to go get on my bike, enjoy the park a little bit. And you should too.